Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second round of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under series, brought to you by the Outworld Broadcasting Channel. It was a bit of a small turnout last week. Just 8 drivers made it to the streets of Adelaide for a pair of 15-lap races, and it was the same trio of drivers that occupied the podium on both occasions, but not in the same order. So at the end of the day, we had a very, very close championship top three after it was all said and done, which we'll have a look at in just a few moments' time. But tonight we trade the streets of Adelaide for the very, very small but very, very fast bullring of Symmons Plains in Tasmania. My name is Steve DeVries, and I'm joined tonight, and happy to say to be joined tonight, by Lewis Wedding. Good evening, Lewis.
Good evening, Nether, and good evening all. So, Symmons Plains. It's going to be an interesting one tonight, and got a few new runners from last week as well, with Nolan Harvey out there, and looks like the midfield here is going to be very, very tight.
Yeah, there is a very, very tight group of cars already towards the top end, and a very, very tight midfield as well. Just going off the practice times, we've got about just under 5 minutes left in practice. But good to see there's some old Group C bangers getting a bit of a run tonight too in those XB Falcons.
Yeah, and they're going to be quite handy around here. I did take a couple cars for a little bit of a spin earlier on today, and just to see how the cars handled in AC, because I've driven a couple of them in AMS. And the XB is actually quite quick, very handy down the straight, and expect to see a couple of those guys be a little bit of a nuisance for a number of runners with their speed down the back straight there.
Yeah, big long drag strip straight coming out of the hairpin all the way up to turn 6 or through turn 5. It doesn't really exist. As we have a look at our race information for tonight, there it is there on your graphics. So 2.4 Ks in length and only 7 corners. Turn 5, which is the big U shape in the back straight, you can see there. Effectively, you really don't notice its speed, so it's classed as a corner, but it's really not a corner to the drivers. But there is 7 corners nonetheless. This is one of 2 circuits that are in the state of Tasmania, the other one of those being Baskerville, which is a little bit further away from Symmons Plains. Baskerville doesn't see the same sort of activity that Symmons does. Symmons sees a lot of the supercars activity and a lot more of the historical stuff these days. But the race format remains the same sort of situation as per last week. A qualifying session of 15 minutes, unlimited laps, not untimed, unlimited laps, as many as you can squeeze in. So good luck trying to get all those in here tonight. And 2 lots of 20 laps for the 2 races tonight. So first one will be as per the grid set from qualifying, and then the second race will be a full reverse grid of the race 1 finishing order. And during the week we have found out that there is a compulsory stop in both races for drivers to take on tyres. And if you need to take on fuel, you can take on fuel as well. I'm not sure how the guys went last week, but I believe most of them just took the tyres. Point standings coming into tonight. We've only had the 1 round, and we only had the 8 drivers take part last week, but we have got a 9th one on there in Bailey Northcote, who was signed up to start but didn't take part last week, so that's why he's on 0 points. But Lewis, the top 3 last week that shared the podium on both occasions, but 2 different winners, one to Terry Marwood, not here tonight, and Shannon Wright in the Volvo, who is here tonight.
Yeah, just having a look at the timing sheets at the moment. Shannon Wright in P2, not too far away from Nolan. So it looks like he's continuing his good form out from Adelaide. So looking like he's quite handy in that old box-shaped Volvo of his.
They call it the Flying Brick, I think, is a nickname that a couple of the guys over at Automobilista Australia and the ATCC Championship over there have given it. And it's not exactly the most streamlined of all the cars out there, is it?
It's not, but he's able to make it work. And currently leading the drivers' standings, but as you can see, the top 3 there, separated by 5 points from first to third. Bit of a gap to Dylan Kolb down in obviously 4th place, but again, a nice little 3-car pack there with Brian Munn and John Wright there as well, just 5 points away. A little bit of gap then to Stephen Shadlow and Brett Willis as well, but with some more drivers out there this evening, it's going to make it quite interesting. But those championship standings at least for Shannon, quite good at this stage because Higginson looks like he's a little bit off the pace compared to the quote-unquote flying brick.
Yes, quote unquote, the flying brick. And as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, I've just been proven completely wrong with Terry Marwood up there in second place. Actually, just a late entrant into the server now, just with a minute to go. So, not sure what his pace is going to be like around here, but he was probably the driver of the night last time out at Adelaide. Not only did he win the opening race quite comfortably, him and John Wright actually missed the start of race 2, had to start from pit lane. They ended up with the controls locked for a short period of time. They are actually close to a lap down, and Terry Marwood's side through the entire field still did his pit stop, and he finished third. So he went from plumb last out of an 8-car field to third by the checkered flag. He was actually right behind second place man Nathan Higginson by the time they got to the checkered flag, but he was a lap down, so that didn't really make any sort of positional gain there for Terry Marwood after all that was said and done. But that was quite the entertaining recovery drive from him after a little bit of a silly error not being able to make the start on race 2.
Oh, it's still a fair effort to come from the pit lane and still end up on the podium, regardless of what series you're driving in or how big the field is, because depending on the sim, it can cost you upwards of 30 seconds plus. I think AC is a little bit better in that regard, but it still costs you quite a bit of time to start from the pit lane, and obviously still had to do a pit stop and on the podium. So to do that is a fair effort. He'll be hoping to not have to repeat that this time out and make things a little bit easier on himself.
Yeah, we're hoping he doesn't have to repeat it. We will soon find out when we get underway. Just waiting on qualifying to switch over now. Now, if we have a look at our race info screen again, just for a brief moment, the really key part of this course, there's 2 key parts of the course in my opinion, Lewis. The first one is the opening couple of corners, that very, very sharp, acute left-hander, which is sort of made a bit more difficult by the fact it also is where the pit exit feeds into the circuit. So drivers that are coming through that part of the circuit, it's a very tricky braking zone getting into turn 1, and they're going to be ultra careful too if drivers are exiting the lane. The second critical part of this course is just after the sector 1 marker, which is the 180-degree left-hand hairpin, which you can take multiple lines through. You can take the traditional line of staying wide and cutting across the face of the apex and getting out the other side. You can also take a wide approach, but the other part that drivers will find difficult tonight is making sure their braking's properly sorted, because at the end of that hairpin, there's a great dirty big gravel pit waiting for you.
Yeah, and even if you do get it, you don't end up in the gravel pit, gravel trap down there. If you don't quite get it right either, the actual tyre bundle sticks out quite a bit around the armco, and if you do muck it up and still try to turn it in, you quite often end up in that tyre bundle in the mid part of the corner. You have seen cars in supercars and in other series end up getting caught up in that wall, and then the next car down and has nowhere to go except into the car that's stuck in the fence. So hopefully that doesn't happen tonight. But turn 4 down there at the hairpin is going to be a tricky one. But I actually found that the braking point for the penultimate corner and then getting through the final corner, depending on what car you're driving in, is going to be quite tricky. Obviously on the first lap when there's no pressure in the tyres and there's no temperature yet, and if they do overheat, depending on which compound you're on, because I do think cars have 2 different compounds from what I've seen. There's the soft compound, and the medium. And yeah, as you said, turn 1 and 2, regardless of what car you're driving in around here, it is very, very tricky. It's easy to lock a front brake on either side, and in these cars you can pendulum them quite a bit with them being quite soft. So you may see some drivers come in, brake a little bit early, just to try and get through there without having a spin. But you could see drivers trying to push it a little bit more, losing the rear end a little bit with all the weight falling on that rear left, and then they sort of just pendulum around as they try to correct it through turn 2 there. So that is going to be something that the drivers are going to have to look out for.
Yeah, I always find that from whenever I've driven this track, just going into turn one, it's very difficult to get your line properly sorted if you apply the brakes too heavily. If you're going to apply them, you sort of need to just give a little bit of brakes before you go through that kink that bends to the right, and then you can get on the brakes a little bit more for turn one. And I just find that you kill a little bit of the momentum, because a lot of people don't realise you're going up and over the hump, which if we go back to in the background there, you can actually just see it on the holding shot. If we go to the proper one, you can see as you come over the start-finish line, there is that hump that sort of goes up and over, and then it kinks to the right, and then it's a very slight downhill gradient until you get to the proper braking point for turn one, where you have to wipe off the majority of your speed before you turn to the left. And a lot of drivers get caught out by carrying too much speed through the kink, over the hump, and then by the time they hit the brakes, it's too late and they're already out of control.
Yeah, it's very easy to have the rear end just kick up a little bit as you go over that little rise there, and you just lose the rear end. So what you did say, you just try to carry just that little bit of brake, sort of trail brake in, and then once you get to a point where you can brake in a straight line, then you can start to apply the brake heavily and then turn in. So that's going to be something a lot of the drivers are going to try to master, but easier said than done, especially in these cars which don't have really any aero. And at the same time, the brakes in them aren't exactly top of the line either, being cars from the 1980s.
Yeah, well, in some cases, cars from the late or the mid to late 70s as well, with some of those Group C XB Falcons as well. Very, very popular. The Moffat livery is out there as well tonight from the 70s, and it looks like we're about to get underway here for qualifying. There's the safety car, which we don't want to be seeing, and we are underway now. It's been uprated to a 20-minute session tonight, just by the looks of things. I'm not sure if that's in error or not, but nonetheless, we'll take it, and we'll get a bit of an issue there with our live timing, but we will get our 20-minute session underway, with most runners taking to the track right now.
Yeah, Nathan Higginson, the first one out onto the circuit. He's quite keen to get out there. As soon as the session ticked over, he was straight in the car and out of the pits. And he's also got Scott Nolan behind him as well. So hopefully Higo can continue some solid form out from round one, and preferably for him, just do a little bit better than what he did last time.
Champing at the bit, as they would say, to get out onto the circuit. And he does have the honour of being the first one out. Now, still aboard the Mustang, a different livery for this car from the last round. Has got himself a livery sorted. Debuted in the Dick Johnson Racing number 17 Mustang. Now with 00 aboard the door. And green teamed with white and a little bit of black as well for this Higginson Media Racing Mustang. And that's
white, and he's in that fence. That's exactly what I said.
And he probably I wonder if he knew he was on the broadcast or not, but we won't hold that against him if he did. But that's not what you want to be doing when you are the first man out, is planting yourself into the hairpin wall, which is the other part that you were alluding to, is not the part of the circuit as you come around that corner if you find guys buried in the fence.
Yeah, thankfully Nankervis was able to just avoid him there, and there's a bit of a gap between the cars after that, so only affected Higginson thankfully, and now it'll be Nolan will be the first one over the line. He's going to set a 58.3, so solid start already. Yeah,
very nice start for Scott Nolan. VL Commodore Perkins Engineering livery for that one. Second of two Perkins liveried cars. The other one, of course, is piloted by the one and only Terry Marwood, who has gone into position number 2, but not by very much either, only 900ths of a second behind Nolan's time. And that's also a VL for Nolan and a VK Commodore for Terry Marwood, so not too much between them, despite the differences in makes and model as well. This is going to be almost a shootout between driver skill.
And as you say that, right straight to the top on a 58.1 in the bricks, so already setting some very solid times and very, very close at the top.
Here he is, the one and only flying brick, the Volvo 240T. Comes in big speed. Oh, big moment for Craig. Is that that's the number 9 car? That's
the Moffat car.
That's the Moffat car. And that's a bit dangerous as well. Reverses straight into Shannon Wright. So that was Matty Cowley. and they've Shannon not right to board at that lap, and I kind of agree with him. Probably the only thing you really could do in that situation is the ball bad things. As we cut to Brendan Ross getting his braking all out of control for turn 1, and I think he's aborted as well and gone back to the lane. So already a few casualties very early on in this qualifying session.
Yeah, also had Nolan go top on a 57.1, which is the fastest time I've seen so far, including practice. So he's flying out there in the VL with right on a 58.1 a second away, but obviously we just saw him get blocked. I also saw on the last lap before Rossi did go back to the pits there with his braking issue. He had another one there at the hairpin as well. He was all kinds of sideways and had a little excursion off the escape road at the hairpin. So he's just struggling a little bit, but I do expect him to find a little bit of extra time there in the old RX-7.
Another one of the RX-7s is the one we have on screen at the moment, the number 65. So there's two cars that actually look very, very similar in livery. The Brendan Ross car carries 444 on the door, and the Jamie Nankervis car carries number 65, which is the one there. And we just saw Nankervis improve his time to fifth place, which very quickly becomes 6th as Brock Harvey goes up to position number 4 on a 58.412.
He also did it crossing the line sideways, so he must have had a moment running wide onto the grass, lost it, crossed the line sideways, and he's gone back to the pits. So an adventurous lap for Harvey, to say the least.
Yep. Now, Terry Marwood has rounded up a couple of drivers on this lap and backing it in. Nice sideways slide through turn 6. Actually put the car pretty much bang on line as a result for the final corner. Just got a little bit of curb with the inside left front and improves his time to a 58.0, but he's still got a little bit of time to find. There you can see Brock Harvey in the V came back a shot, just waiting at pit lane exit for all the guys on flying laps to go past.
Really working the wheel there through turn 1, 2 and 3 there, so he's pushing that thing as hard as he can.
He's got the Higginson Mustang ahead of him. Oh, a little bit taily out of the hairpin. See him pick him up from the roof cam. Now, has he got the legs to reel in the Mustang before he gets to turn 6? I don't think that is going to be happening on this lap. And Shannon Wright improves his lap again to a 58.1. Oh, big slide. Yep, and he's out of control. So just got a little bit too deep into the braking zone there, Terry Marwood. And another one bites the dust, as Queen would say. And plenty of drivers have been off the road in this particular session.
I've got Higginson was drifting through turn 1 and 2 there, but he's eventually gone around. He also did improve on that last lap as well. But with Marwood, that was a perfect demonstration of just what it's like with that penultimate corner. It does invite you to just brake later each and every time in all of these cars, where you brake early because you don't want to overcook the brakes and overload the rear, and that's exactly what he did. Brake a little bit later, broke a little bit harder, but in the end the rears just got away from him and he couldn't hold on to it.
Just seen Craig Laws go off at the hairpin, did a little bit better job than his teammate last time out, got off the road and out of the way of the cars that were coming around the hairpin. Just two men set up in the pits at the minute. Scott Nolan and actually 3 now. Scott Nolan, Brendan Ross and Nankervis are all in the lane. Dylan Call, the only other driver who's not really on the timing sheets there, but he has set a lap according to the timing of a 6:09, so I think there's been a little something going on there for Dylan Call. That's the 888 car. We learnt that was car number 888 during the week. Even though the car does not carry a number on board, it pretty much has the black paint job with the golden arrow, and we've learnt that is the number 888 car, so he is the only man yet to set a representative lap time.
He's on a lap right now, so we should see a lap time of some sort once he crosses the start-finish line this time around. And looks like he's got, I think that is Nankervis behind him in the other RX-7.
So we'll jump up to see Nankervis. Yeah, there is Dylan Call, just off at the final corner as well. So if we scroll back, there he is having a bit of a moment. and he's going to have to dig himself out of the gravel trap. And I was about to say, he was just being a good boy there for a minute and just letting everybody else go through. Oh, geez, Shannon Wright threads the needle at final corner in between the grass and the number 33 XB Falcon for Craig Laws. And Laws off at turn 1.
We've had Harwood and now Harvey jump into the 57s, so they're starting to maybe worry Nolan just a little bit because he's got back out onto the circuit. But Harvey, Marwood and Wright all very, very close together. And then we've got a bit of a gap to Higginson, who's got Ross and Nankervis fairly close to him as well. So it looks like we're going to have a couple different battle packs, at least at this stage, looking at the qualifying time, Steve.
Absolutely right there. It's a Holden 1, 2, 3 at the moment, Nolan, Harvey and Marwood. But Nolan still looks pretty comfortable from my perspective. He's a half a second clear. That gap has just gone down a little bit with Marwood popping in a 57.6. So that moves him ahead of Brock Harvey by, what's that on our markers? Less than a tenth of a second. So it's about 6.5 tenths. The gap.
We've had Shannon Wright just improve as well.
Yeah, sorry, for 65 hundredths, not 6.5 tenths, 65 hundredths. To them, and Shannon Wright did improve and actually went 58, or very close to a complete 58 flat. 58.007 was his lap time. And he prefers the wide line through turn number 4. Different strengths and weaknesses of these cars. Some of them are preferring to take the tighter line, some are preferring to take an early apex, then feeding it out to the edge. Some are preferring to take the wide line. Depends on guessing how much momentum you can carry around the corner.
And it's not just a driver thing like it would be in a single make series either. You got cars that have different strengths and weaknesses, like cars that have the turbos. You want to sort of keep a little bit of throttle on, so you may try just a little bit of a different line, maybe a later apex, just at least at the tighter corners, just so you can get on the power a bit earlier, and then once you're sort of out of the corner, the power kick, the turbo kicks in a little bit earlier. So you will see a little bit of that, especially at the hairpin in particular is one corner where you can take 3 different lines: the tighter line, the medium line, and the late turn in. Personally, I like to take a combo of sort of the in-between and the late turn in, but the late turn in, if you do muck it up a little bit, you can end up in the fence. If you do turn in a little bit late or get on the power just a little bit too early.
Yeah, it's one of those corners where if you're going to take the late turn in and go for the late apex, that you really need to have wiped off all the speed you need to wipe off before you commence your turn in. And it also gets a bit hard too, because very naturally it's harder. Shannon Wright pops in a 57.5, so he's jumped now ahead of Marwood and Harvey. So the top position for Nolan currently 57.105, pretty safe. But the battle is on for who can jump up to the front row. As what have we got here? We've got Bailey Northcote and John Wright playing. Almost looked like they were playing snakies down the back straight. And that's not what you do in qualifying. That's what you do in race trim, fellas.
I'm not sure how the slipstream works in these cars either. I don't know if they've got too much of one, but I'm pretty sure like you would want a little bit as well at this here at Symmons Plains, just to help you along if you're not too close. So it will be something to look out for. Wright is only 4 tenths down because I'm riding with him at the moment at the second split, so if he can keep it together, he may be able to improve if he has a really good run through the last couple of corners.
And he does. He takes some more time off his time. So he's down from a 57.5 to a 57.4 now. So another tenth. Still plenty of time on the clock as well for him to make a late charge. Nolan has been circulating most of this time as well.
He's up at the second split by a tenth of a second here. Just cut to just before the split.
Oh, and he's had a moment.
Wide, and he's gone in he's ended up in the pits.
Yeah, I think that's aborted more by misfortune rather than deliberate. So he's come into the lane as Craig Laws is leaving.
You've got Terry Marwood now. He's starting to. He's starting a lap at the moment. He's behind one of the RX-7s.
Dylan Call now gets a really nice lap time under his belt, 1:09.19, so that's a bit more like the pace we'd expect out of an RX-7. Still 7/10 to find to John Wright though, but at least he's on the board with a very nice lap time. Oh, aborted turn in for Craig Laws at the hairpin, so that's not good. There goes Bailey Northcote, there goes Shannon Wright, and there's Dylan Call. Pick him up. Coming back to the point about turn 4 as well, and your comments around going for the late turn in, the bit that a lot of drivers will find hard to do with the late turn in is you have to go past the true proper turning point for the corner. Like if you take that corner normally, you'll be turning in from a certain point, you'll go across the midpoint of the corner and feed it out sort of in a U shape, whereas if you take the late turn in, you have to go past the optimal point and you effectively are V'ing the corner off. You turn that U shape into a V because you're trying to cut it back at a harder angle, but the benefit for that is getting on the power a little bit earlier, better top end speed at the bottom end of the straight for turn 6, but it is a little bit unnatural for a driver that hasn't done a lot of that sort of turn-in point for a corner of that nature.
Yeah, it's something that isn't easy to train yourself to do. If you're used to just lapping the circuit or other circuits, you might just go and take the normal turning point, and you actually cost yourself a bit of time. You just got to, when you come up to it, just sort of say to yourself each and every time, just no, I've got to turn in later. I've got to turn in later. You've got to find a spot on the outside. I think there's a little bit where a little bit of the tarmac on the runoff and the grass sort of meets, and that's where I sort of try and pick my point depending on what the car is. And yeah, it's a little bit awkward, and even then sometimes, I feel like I'm not even getting it right either. So it is difficult, and what also makes it difficult is when you're racing, because if you do take that wider line, it does open the door for cars behind you to stick it up the inside, which can make it quite a bit frustrating if let's say you're in second or third position and you're trying to get closer to the guys in front of you, and you end up stuck battling with someone down the back straight.
Yeah, spot on there. I tend to agree. It's very hard to train yourself in something different when you've been so used to something else for a long period of time. But if you can get it right and you find you make a gain from it, it becomes easier and easier the longer that you do it. Flash of the lights from Nathan Higginson on Dylan Call. Higginson improved his lap time that last time around, and it vaulted him past Brendan Ross. So he did a 58.450 the last time around. Jamie Nankervis 59.340. That's a PB for him as well. Now that keeps him ahead of John Wright's VL Commodore for the time being. Looks like we are going to go the full duration of the 20-minute session. Looks like we're getting Brian Munn, who was looking like he may not have been able to make it tonight. He's just arrived as well, so that gives us 13 cars. Brian Munn, of course, the 05 Telecom Mobiles VL Commodore from last week. Picking up that car again, so we'll keep an eye on him. See if he can get out there what sort of times he can do. He'd probably be targeting, I'd imagine, John Wright's current time, which is a 1:02.13, is probably the mark that he'd be benchmarking himself against. Just four drivers in the pits, with Brian Munn is included, as Higginson decides it's time to do a little bit of drifting. It's a very nice tribute on the back of that car there, Lewis. If I hope I don't run out of talent if I do go past me. That's one of those liveries that we've seen, or some of those statements that we've seen on a number of cars, especially over at what we're familiar with Automobilista Australia, like going to send it, don't follow me, I'm lost too. There's all sorts of things that some of these drivers come up with. They're very creative, this lot, aren't they?
I think there's one that's I think on Will Devenish's car in the ATCC in AMS. I think he's got like 1-300 how's my driving, and all kinds of different slogans and stuff on the back. Usually when I run out of talent though, you're not going to see me because I'm going to be buried in the fence about 200 metres off the circuit, so you're not going to be able to read it. But this track, the walls are in some places fairly close. So you may be able to read it, especially in AC where everything is pretty crisp as well.
Yeah, no, it looks pretty good. Looking pretty crisp is Brock Harvey on debut at the moment, 4th place. He'd be pretty happy with that at the moment.
And Nolan would be quite happy in a 56.9.
So if he wasn't safe enough already on a 57.1, he returns fire to the guys that are starting to put down some challenging lap times and just getting ever and ever closer by going sub 57. So well done to Scott Nolan. Comfortably clear at the moment by a half second over Shannon Wright.
Yeah, Marwood had a little bit of traffic on that last lap and he's going back to the pits by the look of it. Right at the moment though, he's out on his own. He's got no cars in front of him and he's got a bit of a gap to one of the other VLs behind, John Wright.
Just wondering if you can pick up Brian Munn for me here, Lewis, and just give me an idea of where he currently is on circuit, because he's one that I'll be looking to see what sort of lap time he can do.
It looks like he's approaching the hairpin right now. It looks like one of the RX-7s, the 888 car, off the road.
Yeah, that's Dylan Call. So he's gone through there. There's Brian Munn on cue. The back bouncing up and down on that VL Commodore. Looks like, I'm not sure if it was a bit too soft in the rear or if he's having a bit of a moment trying to get going there.
He's one of the softer cars I felt. I did drive that car, and it is one of the ones where it does get quite a bit of body roll compared to the other cars. You'll see that car move around a little bit more than the others.
I'm sure it's sporting a bit of panel damage there as well. A bit grey on the front right corner. I think that's probably just the graphics a little bit here. But Brian Munn will do a time of a 1:03.4, and that's not terrible after coming into the server late. If he had a bit more time under his belt, he probably would have had a little bit better form there.
Improve at the death. He
has too.
Just got by Marwood by a very, very slim margin.
He did. Not much in that as well. 0.02 of a second there between Brock Harvey and Terry Marwood. So 2 VKs separated not by very much. And Craig Laws is doing a bit of lawn mowing at the final corner. And he's one of only 2 or 3 drivers left on the circuit at the moment. And no improvement from the XB Falcon. Nathan Higginson is... Oh, he must have only just got across the line with not very much time to spare, or is he gone? No.
I think he'd already crossed the line when it was a 000, so he's just going to press escape by the look of it.
All right, there we go. And Higginson, yep, he's also out of it. And Craig Laws as well, as we just wait a few moments here for our grid to get themselves sorted for the first race. So we're going to see Scott Nolan with a maiden pole off of position 1 from Shannon Wright, Brock Harvey and Terry Marwood. Not much between the 2 VK Commodores, so that one pretty much did come down to maybe a little bit of setup and some driver talent there, Lewis.
Yeah, that's one of... Sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. I was thinking of something else and trying to get the dog to stop playing around, but a little bit of setup work. A little bit of more time in the car and, some very nice times from quite a lot of the drivers. Because in practice, no one was anywhere near the 57s outside of Nolan. And now all of a sudden, we've got guys in the mid-57s, even low 57s, and obviously Nolan himself in the 56s, and then other guys in the 58s and low 59s. So good to see the progression from these guys getting better and better. And, that midfield, it's got 2-3 distinct packs, and I reckon we're going to see some really good racing around here.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Let's have a look at the rest of the group as well. There's a couple of RX-7s, so Brennan Ross and Jamie Nankervis not split by very much. They're only split by 0.3 of a second in the end. And the next RX-7 was Dylan Call, who we did see had a couple of dramas getting going in the early stages of qualifying. He still managed 10 laps in the end, and his best was a minute 9:19, which I think was about his proper first flying lap, and that he managed to get without going off the road, and didn't sort of really improve after that. That's the 3 RX-7s. There normally is a 4th one, the Stephen Shadlow RX-7, which is the Red Bull one from last week, wasn't out there this time, and so only the 3 RX-7s tonight. And other drivers, a couple of new guys that are in as well from last week. Bailey Northcote, who was registered for the series, in for his first run, so a minute 1.6 for him. He was the last man inside the 10. And the 2 XB Falcons are I'd say are pretty well matched. I mean, pretty well matched in the fact they're 7/10 of a second apart from each other, but both on a 102 and a 102.7 respectively. And the other one we'll look to see is how Brian Munn can improve over the course of the night, given he's only managed the 3 laps in qualifying, which was, I think, an out lap, a sort of a wind-up lap, and then his best lap was his last lap on a 103.417. So we'll keep an eye out to see how he improves as the night goes on.
Yeah, I expect him to find time pretty much each and every time. He sticks it on the track and continues on his laps. So I think what's going to be important for Brian is just that those first few laps, just to sort of, wouldn't say stick out of, stay out of everyone's way, but more so just try not to be a hindrance, but also try and find just a little bit of time and confidence around the car and track, and then by the end of the race, at least race 1, he should be able to get himself into the sub 1 minute range and in that mid-pack.
Yeah, we'll have a look at Brian Munn's results from last week. He was 4th in race 1 and 6th in race 2 out of the 8 cars that attended, and of course there was the reverse grid component that went along with race 2 as well. I think his race 1, in terms of his race craft, was a lot better than the race 2. Race 2, if memory serves me correctly, he spent a bit of time facing the wrong direction, or more time facing the wrong direction than he did in race 1, and had a little bit of extra work to do to get going again. So hence he was a little bit lower in the standings in the second race, but still he finds himself in that mid-pack with Dylan Call and John Wright, all separated by 5 points coming into tonight. But the usual protagonists, or I wouldn't say the usual protagonists, because they are the ones from last week that all ended up on the podium, Shannon Wright, Terry Marwood, and Nathan Higginson are all top 5 at the moment, but they've got a couple of challenges coming their way, I think, tonight in the form of Scott Nolan and Brock Harvey. So they could be the early disruptors and sort of start staking their claim for what they can do in this 15-round championship, which we will we'll have a look at the calendar toward the end of the night so you can see where everybody is at and what we have on the path ahead, because it's going through the rest of this year and a couple of races to finish off early in 2021.
Yeah, it should be hopefully as the season goes on. Obviously, we've seen it from between round 1 and 2. Some more numbers come on board. Hopefully, that continues on, and towards the mid part of the season, we can get into the mid to high teens of drivers out there, because these cars are quite fun to drive, and it'd be fantastic to see some more Group C cars, a couple more Group A's, certainly a couple other cars in Group A aside from some Holdens, just to mix it up a little bit. But it's, I think we should be a fairly good season with Brock Harvey now throwing his hand up, battling out with Shannon Wright, Marwood and Higginson. But just looking at this, Nolan, 6/10 clear. He's going to be the man to beat, but it's going to be difficult early on though. If Shannon Wright can just stick with him and not put his brick out of the slipstream and in clear air, if he can just stick behind, use the VL of Nolan as a car to punch a hole in the air and just stick in his slipstream, you may be able to challenge him here and possibly even force a mistake. But it should be a very interesting first race here from Symmons Plains. Yeah,
if you can just stay with Nolan as he punches a bit of a hole in the air, that'll be what he's looking to do. Now we're going to just wait for the countdown time. Looks like we've got about 30 seconds remaining until we get a race start here. So Shannon Wright, you can see there. There's John Wright, no relation, I believe. A bit further back in the field, sharing a row with the number 65 car of Jamie Nankervis and an RX-7 behind. So not too much longer to go. Now you'll have to bear with us with the intricacies of this little thing, as we'll have to take the start and then we'll jump away. So lights are running, revs are rising. Who gets the whole shot off the front row? It's Nolan. Nolan with a good launch and comfortably into the lead as they head down to the first corner, and everybody looks pretty well behaved as they go through for the opening little bit. And we will now pick up the action. Apologies for that little bit there. That's just one of the little intricacies that we have with
there's
ASC.
3 wide here.
Yeah, look at this. It's Marwood, Harvey, and I think that's Brendan. No, that's Nankervis, who's had a pretty good start. No, sorry, Brendan Ross.
This is Ross. And it's going to be a drag between the RX-7 and the VK. And Ross is going to come out on top in that one. So fantastic start from Brendan Ross in this one. But Wright and Nolan, they're already out on their own. So they've had a really, really good start. Brock, he's had a solid start, but he'll want to start to put Marwood under pressure and try and get back ahead of Ross in this one. Yeah,
he's gone backwards one spot, and Higginson's pretty much stayed where he's also gone back one spot from the very fast starting Brendan Ross. Got hooked up off the start line. Already the field well and truly spread out as Rossi does a little bit of lawn mowing at turn 1. And he's
already got Cowley in the pits.
Yeah,
Cowley in the pits.
Well, that's an interesting debate. So that means that he's either come in with a bit of damage of some nature, or he is taking his tyre stop. You do have to do one stop for tyres, and maybe he's decided to get it over and done with nice and early.
I think it was a drive-through because he didn't stop and he's kept going. So perhaps he's
jump start.
A jump start.
Yeah, so that'll be a jump start then if that's the case. Well spotted there. Now Marwood has rounded up Brendan Ross as a result of Rossi going off the road at turn 1. We round him up very swiftly. Now Scott Nolan's checking out here.
Look at Ross is off the road, and he's going to drop 2 spots from Harvey and Higginson, and even Nankervis here in the sister car is going to get him here.
Yep, certainly does. So all that opening lap hard work by the 444 has become undone. There is quite a margin though back to a number of drivers. So Bailey Northcote just ahead of John Wright and Craig Laws, who have swapped places a couple of times on this particular lap.
Had Craig Laws go off at the final corner, and he's made a meal of turn 2 there as well.
Yeah, struggling to come to grips a little bit with that car, it appears.
We got Higginson off at the hairpin, and Nankervis almost falling through. So it's all happening here in the first couple of laps. The driver's just struggling with maybe a little bit of different track conditions out there, maybe, or maybe they're just used to qualifying mode, and they've forgotten how to drive a race car.
Yeah, just getting a little bit out of shape, the hairpin there, and that forced the cars behind to check up and take the avoiding action. Bit of a smoke show going on from all 3 of the cars in shot there.
We've got Wright and Marwood side by side at turn 1, so Marwood's had a flying last lap there, 57.9 from him.
Wow.
Well, sorry, no, 57.9.
57.9 was Shannon Wright, 58.3 for 58.7 for Marwood, and then Scott Nolan 57.5. So Nolan doing as he pleases here. But I think it might have been a bit of a mistake from Shannon Wright that's allowed Marwood to... Did he get around the outside at turn 1? Was he on the wrong side? I picked up the shot late. It looked like he was on the outside of... it was on Shannon Wright's right-hand side coming out of turn 1. So...
yeah, he may have done that. I'll have to maybe check the stream back at some point. But also had Harvey close in on second place as well. So these guys have closed up a little bit. As Nolan another 57 for him, while these guys in the 58s, 59s.
58.1 for Brock Harvey, yeah. That's his best lap of the race coming on.
We've got Brendan Ross
4.
in. So it looks like he's going to change his tyres and get some clear air.
Yep, there he is. And calling it perfectly, yep. Oh, bit of an angle job in the pit lane there. Not that he has any traffic to worry about at the moment. Best laps for most of these drivers are starting to come in now. You can see it in purple on your left-hand side there. If it's in red, that means it's the slowest lap of the race. So that one was for Dylan Call with his 1:03.4, slowest lap. Now,
got a nice little pack behind Northcote here with Wright and Laws not too far away.
Yeah, they've been starting to close on him in the last couple of laps as well. John Wright quicker to the tune of 2/10 that time around. New fastest lap for Scott Nolan, 57.423. But even Craig Laws is doing a pretty good job here to hang on to the back of John Wright. And Dylan Call not far away. Now, the one thing that we probably need to talk about here, Lewis, is that depending on when you take your stop, you're probably going to go a lap down if you're sort of buried around 30 to 40 seconds behind the race leader.
Yeah, I think so. The pit lane speed limit is actually quite high here, so like that's not going to stop you all that much. But I think the pit stop time itself will take a little while. In fact, I'll ride on board Craig Laws, who's he's serving his pit stop right now, and I'll just see how long it takes him to serve his pit stop and see if. I'd hope that all the pit stops are all the same.
While you're doing that, Higginson's done a nice pirouette and a 360 in a gravel trap at the hairpin. And there goes the other Mustang. That's the Bailey Northcote Mustang in the background there. He's almost done a similar thing. So not a good lap for the Mustang drivers at turn 4. I did say that's one of the trickier spots to get your braking and turn-in sorted on this circuit. The Tasmanian bullring, as we call it.
And Harvey do his personal best on that last lap, so once again he's closing onto the back of Marwood.
And Higginson's had a bit of a torrid lap this time around.
Oh, and Wright's gone wide and clipped the wall on the outside of the hairpin, and now he's doing some lawn mowing.
Oh, yeah.
He's also got
look at the two Falcons.
The track is jammed down there.
It is. And if we go back and pick up the that was Craig Laws and the sister XB Falcon belonging to Cowley, and Laws had only just come out of the pits, and there was a bit of a log jam, traffic jam at the wrong part of the track.
Shades of yesteryear down there. As we've got Harvey, so he's electing to get his pit stop done and done. I've got my phone up now, and I'll time the pit stop.
All right, Craig Laws having a bit more of an excursion across the final corner. There goes Matty Cowley in for a stop.
Right. Yeah, Wright also in the pits as well, Shannon Wright.
All right, so Scott Nolan continues on his way, so too does Marwood. Oh, big amount of brake lock-up for Craig Laws into turn 1.
So it's about 19 seconds for stationary in a pit stop.
Plus your transit time, so I think calling it 30 seconds is probably about right. So if you're in the vicinity of 30 to 35 seconds down on the race leader when you come in for a stop, you're going to go a lap down. You can see there a number of drivers have already gone a lap down. Brendan Ross, the first of those, having been the first driver to get onto pit road to take service. These laps will start to go quick now.
Ross on that last lap actually doing a personal best 59.7, so he's getting a wriggle on here.
Yeah, 4 drivers with PBs on the last lap. Marwood, Nankervis, Higginson and Brendan Ross, all green boxes on a live timing thanks to SimHub on the last lap. And Marwood now up to P2. Higginson just getting past Nankervis for P3, so now those guys have not stopped yet either. Watching Brendan Ross here on screen, he's about to be rounded up by Terry Marwood. Marwood continuing to lose
off the road there, the penultimate corner.
Yep. Now Terry Marwood hasn't been really making any inroads into Nolan. Nolan's lap times have been consistently in the 57s for the last couple of laps. That time around was a 58.0, so a little bit slower. Dylan Call going to be a little bit of a rolling roadblock. Nope, he's going to get out of the way. Oh, a little bit close-run thing there, as Marwood would have wanted the left-hand side of the track to open up the kink for turn 1.
And Munn come out of the pits right in front of Marwood there in second place. Thankfully there's a little bit of a gap between them, and I don't think it cost Marwood too much, but certainly when he saw him exiting the pit, seeing the flash of that other Commodore in front of him would have maybe worried him just a little bit, as he's ran a little bit wide into the fence there. So a disaster for Munn into the tyre bund on the exit of the hairpin.
Here's the onboard from Terry Marwood, getting a bit of a run on Brendan Ross's RX-7. Easy pickings in the end. Rossi leaves him the space on the preferred racing line. And so with the braking, a little bit twitchy under brakes for turn 6. Gets it stopped, makes the apex. Now just a little bit of feathering the throttle now, plants it. Oh, it's Brock Harvey. Yep, just saw him on the left-hand side there as we were on board with Brian Marwood. So Harvey, having only just done his stop recently as well, he'll be kicking himself for that, because not only is now a lap down, but he's got a lot more work to do to get back to the top 3. Oh, John Wright smacked the fence as well, coming through turn 3.
And that balked Harvey quite a bit. He had to chuck on the anchors. Probably have to chuck both the anchors out to try and slow down. Did make minor contact.
Look at the log jam! Big log jam! Brian Munn threaded the needle through a bunch of cars that were sort of all over the shop. There was cars that were playing for position there. There were cars that were lap cars, and Brian Munn arrived at a vast rate of knots, threaded the needle down the middle of them, and somehow got away with it.
Got our race leader in the pits while all this is happening as well, so
Bailey
everyone
Northcote
should come back onto or most drivers should come back onto the lead lap now.
Yep. And Terry Marwood, the exception to that one, who has gone through. There goes Dylan Call. He's taking his stop. And the
contact between Ross and Marwood. Marwood mucked up turn 2, ran wide, and Ross was coming through and couldn't slow down in time and tag the back of Marwood.
And Marwood's got to just extricate himself from the motorcycle chicane there. Very rarely used part of the track. So that potentially could mean he drops into the clutches of Shannon Wright. Shannon Wright might very well get back second place by the time Terry Marwood comes in for a stop. Oh, there's Brian Munn planted face first into the turn wall. Oh, and the XB Falcon of that's not the Craig Lords one. That's the Matty Cowley one.
Cowley, yeah.
Having to taking a very, very tight line through the turn 4 hairpin just to make sure that there was no contact with that car. Probably a little bit overzealous in my opinion for that one. Now, what does Terry Marwood do? Does he come in this time around? Yes, he does. Okay, so this will now be our readout as to where Shannon Wright feeds in. So Scott Nolan, clean as a whistle through the last couple of corners. There goes John Wright. And Nolan back to the lead of this race. And Shannon Wright's going to do this easy here, I think, Lewis.
Yeah, it's just coming around the penultimate corner now. Should get this done. Marwood's still stationary, but he is at the end of the pit lane, so it actually might be quite a tight thing. In fact, Marwood is going to stay ahead just, but Wright will have the warmer tyres.
There he is, not very much in it though. Game on.
He'll have the warmer tyres here, Shannon, so he's got to make hay while the sun shines
got to
here.
Strike now.
Won't be close enough at the hairpin, but certainly at the penultimate corner, if he's got to run, he's got to get it done there.
On board now. Let's see what sort of a run that he gets. The VK just looks like it's buggering off into the distance here. It's pulling out, stretching its legs. So the brick is acting like its namesake and not really able to stay with the Commodore, punching a hole in the air. Oh, and Marwood's gone a little bit deep though at turn number 6, so that gives half of the distance that the gap was back to the favour of Shannon Wright, and they have got some lap traffic to contend with in the form of Bailey Northcote coming up as well. So cold tyres, not fully up to pressure for Terry Marwood, and now Wright's got to run.
Northcote smartly getting out of the way for these guys as
yep.
well. It's going to be a little bit awkward for Wright, but actually, no, he's done a really good job then and kept on the brake a little bit harder than what you normally would there, and he's given these guys a clean run, so good work from Northcote.
Very well done by Bailey Northcote. Matty Cowley's the next one up the order for these guys. Another fastest lap for Scott Nolan, 57.098, so very close to getting below the 57s again in race trim. That would definitely be an achievement for Scott Nolan. Full fuel.
Well, it wouldn't be full fuel at this stage of the race. Only 5 laps to go.
Sorry, yes, correct, burning off.
And a fresh set of tyres as well. So the car's only going to get better, you'd think, from here on out. So we may see a 56. You may match his qualifying time here.
This battle continues to rage on for the...
What I've noticed, Steve, is that through the turn 1, 2, 3 and 4 is that Shannon does seem to be quite a bit better than Marwood in that opening complex, and then Marwood is just able to stretch it away down that back straight between the hairpin and the penultimate corner.
Yeah, he's getting a good run off the final corner. Sorry, the final corner, the hairpin is Terry Marwood, and that just allows him to have enough margin by the time they get to this braking zone here for turn 6. Although he overshoots it, he's done it again, and the gap is there now, and Shannon Wright needs no second invitation.
He had to get out of it, because if he kept his foot in it, he would have just clipped the left-hand side of Marwood's car there. So smart driving from Wright, but Marwood very, very lucky that Wright got out of it. But he's made another mistake at turn 2.
Yeah, he's starting to worry him now.
Yeah, I think he's driving a little bit more in his mirrors than what he is keeping his eyes forward here, and when you do that, it does spell trouble. So Marwood's just going to have to refocus himself here, focus on just getting the good, well, hitting your braking marks for starters, and then try and focus on getting a really good exit. If you can get the good exits around here, you make it almost impossible for the car behind to get by.
Full on focus mode now for Terry Marwood, with better part of 4 laps to go. Leader has commenced lap 17, but those couple of mistakes. Oh, Brian Munn and John Wright. Did those two get together in the penultimate corner? Because one of the car had its front nose in the air like it was a lowrider bouncing on air suspension, and John Wright was off the road as well. We're not sure if there was a coming together there, but these couple of mistakes, and Marwood's just made another one. Yeah, Marwood has made another one, and now Shannon Wright's going to try and strike while the iron's hot here. They got Dylan Call in the way. He's going to do his best to get out of the path here, and he did, but he didn't have enough legs to get past Terry Marwood out of there. That was probably the best opportunity he's had yet, Shannon Wright. But these mistakes will be starting to toy with Terry Marwood's head here. Shannon Wright keeping a cool, calm and collected cameo here. And he's only got 3 laps starting this time around to strike. He's done a really, really ripper job here to stay with Terry Marwood for the last couple of laps, but just hasn't got the legs at the moment. Just going to rely on one of those mistakes to be significant enough at this stage that he can just slip by, but then he's going to have to go into defence mode.
Yeah, he's going to need to be close enough. But each time Marwood's made a mistake, he hasn't been quite close enough, because he makes another one at turn 2.
He might just have to think about a ascend, maybe down here at turn 4. That's the only real thing I can think of here.
He's quite close this time. He is close. And he's pulling out. He's having a look.
Showing the nose.
Brakes, but that's going to compromise Marwood's exit this time.
Yep, that's a better exit now. This is much closer this time for Shannon Wright. So he's a lot closer now, that if he gets or stays this distance, he'll worry Marwood out of the position, possibly at turn 6. Now the gap behind these guys for Brendan Ross and Nathan Higginson is pretty close as well. Marwood just overdriving the car a little in these latter stages of the race.
And Marwood, takes that wider line on the exit of the final corner, sweeps across. They've got a little bit of traffic here that may balk Marwood a little bit.
Craig Laws is the driver of question. A little bit better for both drivers through his corner, but Marwood's had to check up a little bit here, I think, as well. And again, Shannon Wright's got the run.
There's a little bit wide on the exit was Marwood of turn 2. Problem is where do you go? Because they got the lap traffic right in front.
Follow the Falcon. He followed the Falcon, and it's getting a bit close here.
I don't know how they've made it through there alive, but they've done it.
And there was a bit of panel rubbing to boot as well. A bit of paint exchanged between Marwood and Laws. But Shannon Wright has actually... Oh, hang on a minute. What's happened here? Shannon Wright has gone up. Terry Marwood has...
He must have DC'd.
Oh,
he
no.
Must have disconnected.
Heartbreak for Terry Marwood. He's gone back to the pits. So just as that little battle was shaping up, and the Marwood car's in the lane. You're spot on there, Lewis. So that has not gone as Terry Marwood would have hoped. That's a disaster. This was shaping up to be a really great battle, and we're looking forward to seeing what happened at turn 6 on that time around. Final lap.
It was setting itself up to be a grandstand finish, with those guys finally getting very, very close. And I think on that last lap we would have seen Wright try.
Hey, big smack of the fence. Big smack of the fence for the number 65 car. That's Jamie Nankervis. Not sure what happened there, but he's planted into a wall somewhere. And we were just watching Shannon Wright come up to the hairpin, and there was that.
Scott Nolan
Checkered
the
flag.
line to take victory.
Yep, so well done to Scotty Nolan, gets the first win. Shannon Wright some 30 seconds behind, but he can hold his head high. He was in that battle right till the very end. We were just robbed in the closing stages of a grandstand finish for second and third. So second goes to Shannon Wright. So only the top two getting home on the lead lap after that. It would have been three if Terry Marwood was still on the road. But that means that Brendan Ross will take third. And then Nathan Higginson was locked in battle with Nan Curvis for a little bit. So that means that Higginson will end up with position number 4 after all that's said and done. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to score Terry Marwood in this one. Brock Harvey has crossed the line. There he is in pit lane, so no worries there at all. But Scott Nolan with a victory on debut. Shannon Wright second. Third going to Brendan Ross.
Yeah, Ross in the back end of that race did a really good job keeping it clean and mistake-free, and he was able to benefit from a lot of other drivers' mistakes out there.
Oh, Bailey Northcote having a bit of fun down at the hairpin there, and actually now doing some reversing. He had actually finished in P6, did Bailey Northcote. So good job by him. Oh, and a little bit of shenanigans going on, bit of interesting work going on there. Dylan Call, same sort of thing. Dylan Call finishing 10th in that one. Just recording a few of the points finishes just so we can see where everybody sits.
Just having a look at the fastest laps. Obviously, we did have Nolan well out in front, 57.0. But we did have Brock Harvey 57.8 and Shannon Wright at 57.9. Quite quick as well. But Brendan Ross, who did end up finishing in third place again, his fastest was only a 59.3, and he finished in front of Harvey, who we did see have a couple spins. He's also finished ahead of Nathan Higginson. His best was a 58.8, and Terry Marwood, of course, had his issue, which I'm guessing was an internet issue, or perhaps he accidentally pressed the return to pit button or something like that. But even so, Brendan Ross finishing 3-4 cars in positions in front of people, where he had a slower car, still a fair effort, especially where he was at the back end, at the start of the race after he had a little bit of an adventure off the circuit at the penultimate corner there.
And not only that, one man that we were talking about was how Brian Munn would progress after not having a hell of a lot of practice tonight. He's actually finished ahead of the man who he was battling with most of the time and in the last round at Adelaide, and one who we said he'd probably be targeting that time in John Wright. John having a couple of off-track excursions in that one. And if we take a look at the best laps, John Wright's best lap, a 101.4, and then you go all the way up to Brian Munn was a 101.4 as well. So the times that he was setting out to, probably targeting on the back end of that one, he's set out and he's achieved. So that's a pretty good effort. So considering he came into the night on a 103.4, I think it was from memory, as the only lap he set in qualifying, and then getting down to a 101.4, matching what one of the other fellow VL drivers has been able to achieve, is a pretty good feather in your cap after very little practice.
Yeah, it's a fair effort with no practice to come in, do the one qualifying lap, and then, the next lap you do is just, lap one of the race. So he was able just to, be about half a tenth faster than, I guess, his yardstick in John Wright. So feather in his cap. He'll be hoping, though, if you could just scrape into the 1 minutes, I think. Just find a couple more tenths, and he'll be happy with that. Also got a couple of messages from Brock Harvey. He actually got hit in that race while he was lapping a driver, and that's what ended up dropping him down the field. So a bit of a shame from him. Also getting word that he's going to start on the softs in this second race, and then when he pits, he's going to put the mediums on. So a bit of a change up in this one, and a bit of tyre strategy as well, which is a little bit surprising, almost like modern day Formula One with multi-compounds going to some of these cars.
Yeah, the old school multi-compound situation well, that was sort of what's old school then. It's new school sort of now. We see it all the time in the Formula One with having to run two different compounds, and no different here as well. So the times that we saw from Scott Nolan, I would imagine we were probably seeing that on a softer tyre at the back end of that stint. He didn't quite dip below the 1 minute, below the 57 second barrier on that occasion. It was a 57.098 was the fastest lap of the race. And when we looked to see who the next closest person was, it was Shannon Wright on a 57.9, so 9/10 of a second away. And then the next best were the drivers in the 58. So Terry Marwood 58.1, Nathan Higginson 58.8, Brock Harvey. Actually, so Brock Harvey was in a 57.8 as well. So I do apologise. He was the second quickest car between Scott Nolan and Shannon Wright in the 57s. But most of the other drivers, or half the field under a 1 minute lap and half the field over a 1 minute lap.
There's still some capabilities from a number of these drivers that perhaps in the race got a little bit balked or caught up in battles early on and maybe had some battle damage in that race. So I do expect a few guys to find a little bit of extra time now that they've got a bit of running in them. Problem is, though, is that for some of the guys in the midfield, as we've seen in other series that we've participated or ran ourselves, with these reverse grid races, is that if you are in the midfield, it can be a good place and a bad place at the same time, where you do have the faster guys behind you. You've also got slower guys in front, so you can sort of get pinched where you've got the faster guys trying to get a move done on you, while you've got a slower guy that may be balking you a little bit in front of you as well. So it is going to be a little bit awkward. But if you can get a fast start, get through the first couple turns, all right, maybe make up a couple positions, we could see one of these guys in the midfield actually end up being a really big winner and set themselves up for a really good result.
Absolutely. I'm actually just having a look at the moment just to see the sector times from the last lap, because we can do that while we've got this time in between races. Scott Nolan was purple in Sector 1, it was a 19.8. Sector 2 was a 19.3, but he didn't have the purple final sector. That honour, actually, we can only see it up to the first decimal point. Shannon Wright and Brendan Ross both had 17.8s for the final sector, whereas Nolan was a 17.9. So that's the only real part of the circuit where the Commodore sort of seems to have a bit of a deficit. Nolan sort of managed to minimise that as best as possible. Brock Harvey also was a 17.9. Some of the other drivers in there were into the low and mid 18s. So some of these more nimbler cars getting their braking a little bit better and able to get through those last couple of corners a little bit better, or slightly better than the big Commodores. So the parts of the circuit where you expect them to be quicker along the straights, they were quick, and the only real part of the circuit it's basically two corners for the final sector is where the other cars were making up their time.
Yeah, I think where you'll see the biggest, as you can see, the first sector is the biggest discrepancy, and that's where a lot of the driver input comes in, particularly turns 1 and 2, trying to get through there, and then of course, the traction coming out of turn 2 as you go through turns 3 and 4 can be a little bit tricky, and it probably would be a bit tricky if you're on the soft tyres as well. So that's where you'll find your better drivers or guys that have a little bit of a setup going. They played around with the rear suspension a bit and tried to get that nice bit of traction out of turn 2, turn 4, and the final 2 turns. So yeah, it is interesting though that Nolan wasn't able to get the fastest time in the final sector there. So maybe he's hurting just a little bit, or he's just a little bit conservative on the throttle because he knew he was quicker in the first 2 sectors, that he could just make sure he set himself up nicely coming out of the final corner for turn 1 perhaps.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're in the last little bit of a countdown phase here, just getting ready as the grid is being reversed for the second race tonight. So same situation, 20 laps, mandatory stop for tyres, but you'll see Scott Nolan having to start from position number 13. And the front row, just going off the results from the last race, is going to be John Wright, followed by Matty Cowley, if my math is correct. And
Yeah, it's just ticked over, and John Wright
correct.
and Matt Kelly
Matt
on
Kelly,
the front row.
they are on the front row. Now, the interesting part of this is going to be where Terry Marwood has been classified, and he is plumb last. So
Perhaps if you get a DNF, it doesn't count.
yeah, well, that's the only thing that I'm trying to work out there. We didn't have any non-finishers at the last race in Adelaide, or last round rather. So that part of it we're not quite sure. We'll have to check with John Wright between races, or between rounds rather, just to confirm that. Because if that's the case, that means where we had Terry Marwood on our screen as 7th place, that means he's going to drop toward the back. So let's just go back to live pictures as we get ourselves ready to go for race 2. So there's Matty Cowley's number 9 and John Wright's number 43 starting on the front row, and about 40 seconds.
Harvey just leave the game as well with 40 seconds. Hope he can load back in time.
Yeah, well, this is one of those things we've seen from time to time. There's safety cars at the back of the field there for the broadcast crew. There you can see Terry Marwood's VK, the NZ number 11 Perkins livery car there sitting at the back of the grid. There's your top 2 from the first race, just ahead of him in Scott Nolan and Shannon Wright. As we cycle along,
Harvey has got back in just in the nick of time as the lights come on.
Yep, so he has, and there's a bit of toing and froing going on here. As we go back to the front of the field, the lights are on. We'll take the start. Oh, there's a jump start. Is that for Matty Cowley? He's leapt forward at the wrong time. I'm wondering if that's going to be penalised, the jump start. So Brian Munn goes through, and we are on the run to turn 1. Oh, there's already a bit of shenanigans. There's a bit of a move from Craig Laws. Was out of control getting into turn 1.
Nolan's off as well. I think Nolan may have got a hit as well, so he's dropped to the back of the field.
Yeah, he has, and we picked that up, and there goes Brock Harvey. So Brock Harvey actually had to start from pit lane, so he is now on the move, and here we go. All the sheep stations happening on the run down into turn 1 have now been replicated down at turn 4 now. Terry Marwood's had a ripping start, though, around the outside of Craig Laws, and
Curvis is off at the hairpin.
Yep, there he is, just kicking up the dust as he rejoins. And there's Brock Harvey, and Harvey's gone face first into the wall. Too aggressive on the run, and I think he has decided to give it away.
Might try and repair his car and get back out there. Can do that in a certain course. I don't know if it's set in the server though. Had a fantastic start first lap from Nathan Higginson. He started.
And I think there might have just been a serve there for Dylan Call. I think maybe just got a little bit of a love tap from Matty Cowley behind, because they were nose to tail, and Dylan Call's RX-7 fishtailed violently off to the left and trying to get going now. So already plenty going on in this opening race, or the opening couple of laps of this race. Rather.
He's done a really good job there, Call, of not just keeping his foot in it and just spinning it and ending up right in the middle of the road. If he had done that,
and I think that might have just been Matty Cowley may have just been unloaded by Bailey Northcote there into turn number 4. So he's going to have to wait for these guys to go past, and then he can get going again. Terry Marwood. Brian Munn's off the road. Jeez, this race has gone off. It's all happening, and there's I was a bit worried there was going to be some contact of a very, very bad nature between Brian Munn and Shannon Wright at the very, very high speed turn 5. Bailey Northcote is getting rounded up here, and Scott Nolan decides, you know what, guys, I don't want any part in this shenanigans. I'm going to come in, take my pit stop, and then I'm going to get back out in some clear air, which I think is probably the sensible option considering he started plumb last. Brock Harvey now coming up officially as a DNF.
Yeah, he said he's just got a message, said his internet glitched out. I've had John Wright run wide at the hairpin, so that's going to allow Higginson to close in. Higginson was only a couple of tenths faster on that last lap, but we've already got Marwood up into third, but he's actually been caught quite quickly from Shannon Wright, who did have to deal with Northcote just a couple corners earlier. So the protagonists from race 1 that were battling it out for second and third, continuing their battle at the moment here in race 2. But while they're battling here at the moment, they will have to worry just a little bit about Scott Nolan.
There's been a
And
change.
it might be smart for those guys if maybe they just didn't battle as much as looks like
John
there's John Wright off the road there.
Yep, the bit of a change for the lead I was just about to allude to as Higginson goes through. But you're right, these guys are going to have to be careful of whatever Scott Nolan has done. Oh, and that's a bit awkward for these guys chasing down Higginson at the minute. So the top 3 from the 2 races that we had at Adelaide last weekend are now in positions 1, 2 and 3, although again not the same order that any of them finished at last week. Oh, and Northcote's given John Wright a bit of a shove down at the hairpin as well.
And he's stuck. That's an awkward spot. It's going to be awkward for the drives that come up, and he's tried to reverse and it's collected the circuit.
He's collected Dylan Call as well when he's trying to do that. So very, very messy second race here for these guys.
Wright's in. I was about to allude that it'd be a smart idea if I was right, because he does look faster than Marwood and he's faster than Higginson, to just pull into the pits, get some clear air, and try and stay out in front of Nolan if you can. It will be interesting to see where Nolan ends up in a couple laps' time.
Should be easy pickings here for Terry Marwood if he can round up Nathan Higginson. Higginson has taken the defensive line down to turn 4 here, so you're going to make him go the long way. And so say maybe trying the over and under. That's pretty well driven from Higginson, but good exit for Terry Marwood, and it was an easy drive off of turn 4 in the end.
As Nolan fastest lap of the race, and he did jump in front of Wright, so he will be in the effective race lead. So that's all it took, was just 2 very, very quick out laps, and he's already jumped into what will be the effective race lead. And this battling between Higginson and Marwood is also exactly what the doctor ordered for Shannon Wright, because with that battling, it will have cost them both time. And when they do pit, if Wright can just keep it on the grey stuff and keep consistent, he should be able to jump both Marwood and Higginson when they do pit.
Yeah, so Brendan Ross is the next man back in P3, and then we look for Scott Nolan. So here he is. He's got a paddock of clear track ahead of him, as John Wright is now in pit lane. Rock Harvey, the DNF, confirming there's some technical issues for the VK Commodore driver, so he's out of this one. Will not rejoin the circuit. Nolan that time around 57.423, which is
very consistent.
Very consistent, just banging in the laps at the moment. And there's Shannon Wright directly behind. There's Brian Munn off at the hairpin. Now he's going to be really careful here as he rejoins, because here comes Nolan, and the next one is Shannon Wright. And well, Brian's done pretty well to get back onto track there and not really upset the line of Shannon Wright too badly.
Yeah, stayed to the right-hand side of the circuit, and did a good job. Stayed out of everyone's way.
Lights on for Scott Nolan as well. And I don't think he probably realises that. Shannon Wright actually probably knows that he is a lap ahead, I guess. A lap behind. Something's just not right over there. No, it's okay. And Nolan now 57.2 for his best lap. Oh, he's had and Brian Munn a moment at turn 1. We're just watching him after his recovery from the pits. From the going off at the hairpin the previous lap.
Just looking at the lap times, Marwood on not the last lap, but the lap before, did his personal best of 57.9 and was a little bit faster than Shannon Wright. So Wright's going to have to stick in the very low 58 range, but on that last lap, Marwood 58.5. So Wright doing all he can, but he's probably going to have to find an extra tenth or two just to seal the deal on ending up P2 after the pit stops here. Yeah,
and Craig Laws being ahead of him on the track is probably not helping the progress as well. I mean, this is for position. And there's a bit of banging as well as Wright looked for to try and shoot the gap at turn 7. Got the job done.
Oh, that's a bad lap. That's a 59.6, so that's cost him about a second compared to Marwood on the last lap. So he's going to have to get back on it and probably hope for a little bit of a mistake from Marwood at some point before the pit stops.
Yeah, the big Group C Falcon probably wouldn't have helped that cause at all, being in the way. But look at the difference now that Wright has managed to clear away from this big beast of a Falcon. Oh, another bit of an issue there for Craig Laws. As just goes to show the difference in speed, Brian Munn off the hairpin again, and going to have to be careful grabbing reverse, but he's got no traffic to worry about, so that's all right.
Got Brendan Ross in the pits as well.
Yep. Now, what about Craig Laws? How does he go approach? Oh, just wondering if he's having
John Wright off the road at the last corner.
I'm wondering if there's a bit of an issue for this Falcon here at the moment. It just seemed to be just revving, whether it's missing a gear or something on the gear change is not quite right, and he's just running off the grass here, and I think he'll probably take the opportunity to come into pit lane, and he does, along with Brendan Ross, who's already in the lane. So Marwood and Higginson yet to take service, and Marwood decides now. And what about Nathan Higginson, who had Bailey Northcote for company? And now that Higginson's decided to do some lawn mowing, I think he'd probably be best to take the service now, but he doesn't. So that probably is going to cost him a podium position in this race. He will take the lead for this one. Very dangerous. Yeah, the other Mustang with a very dangerous rejoin there by Bailey Northcote, but thankfully last second saw Higginson coming through.
All right, so Marwood has been Nolan, and Wright done his personal best of 57.5 when he needed. So the lap before, the in-lap, Marwood also did a 59, so he must have got balked somewhere. But that fastest lap from Shannon Wright has given him that position in the end. If he didn't do it, he would be right behind Marwood, but we have seen Marwood be quite quick at the end of races, and we know he's quick down the straight in comparison to the Volvo, so if he can just keep it nice and steady, he should have a chance at the end of the race to get that position back.
Yeah, very lucky boy that he didn't lose too much more time to Terry Marwood while the pit stop sequence was happening behind, well, he was still stuck behind Craig Laws, otherwise that was going to be a third place. Net third place for Shannon Wright after all. That was over and done with. But he'll have to box on for the better part of the next 9 laps, or 10 or so laps. Yeah, we saw these two guys go toe-to-toe in the closing stages of the last race, only for Terry Marwood to have some technical gremlins and not see the checkered flag. Their lap times the last time around, well, Marwood was on an out lap, so not a fair comparison, but Shannon Wright's 57.9 last time out, and Marwood will be the next lap time we want to turn our attention to, just to see if he is really making any inroads. This is the part of the circuit where the Commodores really have the advantage, this straight line horsepower, the big shot out of turn 4 through turn 5, and then they have to get on the brakes a bit earlier for turn 6. And this part of the circuit's where it favours the Volvo.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of driving style to do with that as well. I did see at the back end of race 1 there that Wright would just not quite use all the road on the exit of the final corner and just set himself up nicely for the braking zone for turn 1 and 2. Looks like Marwood this time though, looks like he's learnt that lesson. And looks like he's not using as much road now, and he's able to get through that first section a lot easier.
Well, it was a 57.6 last time around for Shannon Wright, 58.2 for Terry Marwood. So there's still plenty of time for Marwood to find, and it looks like he's lost a bit more ground this time around as well. So just not maybe able to stay with Shannon Wright at this particular stage. Depends on what tyres they've gone with, I guess, as well.
And Marwood did, he couldn't quite get the nose in at the hairpin, so I think he just outbroke himself a little bit and cost him a little bit of time. And I think, penultimate corner there as well. Just needs to use a little bit more of the outside there. But with these cars under braking, you do sort of, you are moving around a little bit. The rear does like to dance, so he's probably a little bit worried about that, especially after some of the mistakes he was making under braking at the back end of race 1. But one thing that could work in his favour is that Wright did pit much earlier, and his tyres may end up being in not as good nick at the back end as Marwood comes up. Oh,
yeah, bit of sideways action.
There.
Yep, that's the Craig Laws car, and a bit of sideways action there. Would have been a bit of heart in the mouth stuff there for Terry Marwood. Should go on board with the big 70s Falcon. Lewis, I was saying to you before the broadcast, when I looked into the interior of this car and saw the job that had been done with recreating it, for me it was like sex on a popsicle stick.
Yeah, that dash is, it's a very, very good looking dash. Bit of a shame that they couldn't quite match up the steering wheel and the driver hands, but yeah, you just look at that dash and it really is a bit of a masterpiece, really. Yep. I mean, very, very well detailed. I just wish you could just turn the knob on the radio and just start playing some tunes while you're trying to chase down the car in front, though.
Well, it was only an AM radio back in those days as well, too, because I mean, we've had a fair share of older 70s Falcons in the family. My brother's got one, my dad had one, and there was only an AM radio back in those days, so he didn't have much option there, but not that the AM radio is much good for Craig Laws there as he makes about his umpteenth excursion to the gravel trap.
Well, perhaps he could, turn on the footy or the cricket, depending on what time of year you'd be out there racing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably about the best you could do, but not that you'd be able to hear much of it over that big thumping V8 under the bonnet as well, and all the padding surrounding your race helmet and that as well.
Oh, we've got a car around, and Nolan's had to back out of it. He's ran into the back.
Who's that? That's around there. That's the Cowley Falcon, the XB Falcon by Matty Cowley.
Yeah, Cowley he had to slam on the brakes because I think it was Brian Munn had a bit of a half spin in front of him under braking, and unfortunately Nolan was right behind Cowley when he slammed on the brakes to avoid the car in front. But it shouldn't affect Nolan too much. He does have about 4 seconds in front of Wright, but certainly not ideal. Hopefully not too much damage on that car. It doesn't look like there is too much. Still got Higginson out there who is yet to pit, although I do imagine that he'd be in at some point in the next couple of laps though, because so you do have to pit.
Yep, 5 more laps to go. Now I can't remember if there's a pit sequence window that you have to do your stop in or not, so that part of it I don't know. Now the only other part of it that we weren't quite sure of is that we thought that Cowley may have jumped the start from the very beginning of the race. We were watching it from the camera on the start-finish line, and he did jump forward and then stopped and then waited until the lights went out, but he hasn't been given a penalty for that, so it looks like he may have been a very lucky boy. Yeah,
perhaps the old supercar ruling where as long as you're still in your box and you're not moving by the time the lights go out, you don't get penalised, which is actually quite nice. There are other sims where if you move no matter what, you get penalised. So got away with it, but good for him. And he's actually sitting there in 8th place. And well, I was going to say he wasn't doing too badly, but that little off there not going to help his chances.
There goes Higginson. So that finally cleanses the field, pretty much just as Scott Nolan got to his rear bumper anyway. So Nolan had a really solid run from his stop through the field, and still lapping in the 57s. Best lap of a 57.217. Last time around was a 57.9, so he pretty much hasn't deviated from the 57s all night. He's been pretty much like a metronome, banging out those really consistent lap times, hitting the brake markers pretty much absolutely perfectly, getting through the traffic really well as well, so he's almost had a faultless night.
Yeah, outside of sort of being balked there a couple of laps ago, he's been absolutely faultless. Shannon Wright as well, since his pit stops here, he's been really, really consistent for the most part, and within half a second of his personal best pretty much every lap. So that's why we've seen him edge away from Marwood, who did re-emerge from his pit stop right behind him, but Wright set his personal best at the right time and was able to jump him at the crucial moment.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. Like the shoe was on the other foot, basically, which is race 1. It was Wright hunting down Marwood the one making the mistakes, but they were trading lap times that were very similar to each other. In this occasion, it's a complete role reversal with when Wright's out in front with the clear air. He's had the wherewithal and the skill to be able to pull away, and quite comfortably from Terry Marwood as well. He's been able to side his way through the traffic pretty well, and he's going to do the same as Brendan Ross gets 2 wheels on the grass.
He did a really good job holding onto that for so long. Yeah, that's what happens when you got half your car on your grass under braking. There's no grip on the grass and there's grip on the tarmac. But in the end, didn't lose too much time out of that. But certainly not what you want. But he's got Nankervis, his teammate, 8 seconds behind, and he's got Higgins at about 30 seconds down the road. So not really going to affect his race all that much unless he does it again, which he could do because he probably would have overheated his tyres quite a bit. As I think that's Call right in front of him, also struggling a bit under braking at the penultimate corner.
Yeah, I don't think Dylan Call will probably be too pleased with his night's work here. He's got 2 wheels on the grass there as well, but I believe he's letting through Brendan Ross. And yeah, he would have been. He's a lap down to, well, multiple laps down to Brendan Ross. Craig Law's off the road again. But no, not the same sort of showing that we saw from Dylan Call at Adelaide. Probably, again, a couple of the drivers have remarked that the RX-7 definitely not suited to this circuit. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of circuit the car is suited to when we have a look at our calendar and the kind of circuits we're going to. I'm thinking that maybe some of those tighter circuits, like there's an event later in the year we've got for the Singapore Grand Prix track. Oh, Dylan Call out of control, going through turn 5.
He's on the grass on the other side of the road, and then when he went to turn, obviously he didn't have any grip, and perhaps he's just a little bit caught up with something else, wasn't paying too much attention. Maybe he had his phone up or something, and well, he's lucky to not end up in the fence on the other side, but certainly a bit of an adventure. Yeah,
that's an adventure and a half. That's like, turning up on a desert island, that sort of thing right there. You've gone from one extreme to the other, from the track to the grass, and he was well off the track. They always say if you make the grass, you make the fence, but he was very lucky not to make the fence on that occasion.
Certainly was.
Oh, a little bit of a game glitch there as Brendan Ross goes through the hairpin. Just sort of see the car kick up. So race leader is about to take the checkered flag. So pretty much faultless night for this man. And well done to Scott Nolan. 2 from 2. And maximum points.
Did the smart thing early in this race when he was stuck in that battle pack, pitted early, set the quick laps in clear air, and ended up quite comfortably out in the lead, and was never really headed since. 2nd
for Shannon Wright, 3rd for Terry Marwood, so good run from those guys there. Now Nathan Higginson has managed to stay on the lead lap, so he will get a 4th place finish. Goes along with his 4th in race number 1.
He's run a little bit wide there, just overcooked it, but it's not going to matter too much.
He's well and truly clear of Brendan Ross. There we go, 4th for Higginson. Now Brendan Ross is... Okay, something's happened to Brendan Ross there. I think
he'd already crossed the start-finish line, so he's already a lap down, I think, and he's left the server, I think.
Yeah, I think that's where we're seeing. That's why we're seeing one sort of shorter on the time. As we've got Bailey Northcote, he's about to cross the line for 7th, so that'll be a 6th and a 7th for him on the night. And Brian Munn's behind him on the road at the moment. So Nankervis will finish 6th, just ahead of Northcote. There's John Wright off to the side. 10th place finish for Wright. Cowley will get home for 9th place after a couple of excursions and a spin on the front straightaway. Craig Wills will be home in 12th. And Brian Munn, the only other one that we're just looking for. So yeah, here he is, just behind Bailey Northcote there, inside the top 8. And Dylan Call's night ends with an 11th place finish. So not the sort of night that the RX-7 drivers would probably have liked to have had here, Lewis, because they only had really one part of the circuit where they were better than all the other cars, and it wasn't the part that really counted. They just had no power down those straights, and they couldn't get the power on at the right time to even really challenge some of the other guys ahead of them.
Yeah, but that obviously they are Group A and Group C cars, and
Correct.
they are the Group C cars. So you are going to have some rounds where those cars aren't going to be as competitive, and this week for them certainly Symmons Plains, you do need to be able to brake, and you do need to be able to have power. And yeah, they didn't have too much of the old power this weekend, but at other circuits with some corners and a bit of setup work and little elbow grease from the drivers, and you should see them more competitive from some of the other circuits. So I wouldn't be too disheartened. Ross still was able to manage to pick home a podium, I think, in race 1 there too. So as long as they just keep it nice and consistent, they should still be able to pick up some good results as other drivers falter.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I'm just waiting to see if there's a number of guys that want to try and make their way into the broadcast booth, and just asked in between races if we could have the top 3 from race 1, race 2 and race 3. And well, we've got our third place man from race 1 here, Lewis. I'm just looking to try and drag a couple of guys around now, and looks like we've got our race winner from both races is in as well. And well, we might start with who we got. Let's start with Brendan Ross here. So he was third in race number 1, and not bad start on debut here, Rossi.
Yeah, not a result I expected for my first foray in AC, but yeah, not too bad.
Now the RX-7 was probably down on the Commodores relative to the parts of the circuit that counted, the 2 long straightaways, but it did have a little bit of extra grunt through the last couple of corners. But as Lewis alluded to before, difference between the Group C and the Group A cars, and it's probably not the circuit that you probably want to come into, and sort of it's a bit of a wake-up call, isn't it, with a circuit like this with a car like the RX-7?
Yeah, I wasn't too familiar with how it would handle, but yeah, just the Commodore sort of ate it up down the straights, where the Mazda was sort of good in the last sector and able to handle the corners pretty well. So going to a circuit like Barbigale would probably suit it a lot more.
Yeah, that's the one of the next stops on the calendar, I think, Barbigale Raceway. And I think a couple of other circuits a bit further on into the calendar would probably suit the RX-7 a lot better. So, but it's a debut, and we'll look forward to seeing you a bit later on in the series as well if you continue on. And third and the 5th place on the night is not a bad return.
Not too bad. Thanks, guys. Go Hans.
Let's have a chat to Shannon Wright here, Lewis. A pair of seconds on the night. He's going to be happy with his night's work.
Yeah, it was a very hard one, mate. Since I did the last update, the old Volvo's got a few more bricks added to it.
Bricks? You're talking about a ballast weight adjustment here, I'm taking.
Oh, mate, well, as you said, it's a flying brick. I think she's got a little bit heavier.
Okay, so the only part of the circuit where we did notice you had the slight edge on the other cars was in the last couple of corners. I'd imagine the most of that's being made up under braking.
Mate, I spent a lot. Once I realised I had no top end, I couldn't get off the line as quick. I thought, right, the only thing I can do is make it up in braking and turning. So that's how I set the car up.
Wonderful. And what are your thoughts about the next track we're going to be visiting in a week's time? How do you think the Volvo's going to go?
And what track's that one, mate?
All right, well, we're going to bring it up right now for all those guys that are waiting to see. Actually, I'm sort of a little bit behind the 8-ball here, so that track in question will be Barbigale. Rossi was correct. It is Barbigale in Perth.
Mate, I love Barbigale.
Oh, well, enough said. I think we need to... You've put the boz on yourself here now.
No, actually, mate, it's a cornering track and a braking track, and I think that's where the Volvo is going to show its strengths.
All right, well, let's see how you go in a week from now. Well done on your pair of seconds tonight.
Thank you. Had a great battle there with Terry. Mate, I think there was probably a paper thickness between us there at times. A couple of times where I just stuck the nose up a bit and thought, yeah, no, I'll just back out a little bit and pass safely. And unfortunately to him, he copped a disqualification. Apparently there was a bit of a glitch saying that he didn't pit when he actually did.
Ah, right. Okay, well, that's a great segue that we you've led into for us here. If we go over to Terry, if he can hear us. Terry, third place in race 2. We pretty much had you down as the drive of the night last round when you drove pretty much from the rear of the grid after missing the start in Adelaide to a third place. But talk us through what's happened there in race 1 from your perspective, because Shannon was right. That was a hell of a battle shaping up right to the end, and for some reason you dropped out of it. But talk us through it. What happened? And no, I don't think we've actually got Maybe Terry's just stepped away from his mic for a moment, but definitely one of those things we're looking forward to getting a handle on what happened there. Lewis, I might leave you to have a chat with our double race winner tonight on debut.
All right. Well, Scott, your first evening in these cars in AC, as far as I know. How'd you find the car? Must have been pretty good out there because you're quite handy in qualifying. You got better and better as practice and qualifying got on, and then in the race you smoked everybody out there.
Yeah, cheers. It was just a bit of fun, really. It was just, I remember when this sort of, like the guys that made this mod sort of dropped a beta, and a few of us boys went and had a bit of a run, and we just really enjoyed the cars. So I was just looking for something that I could do where I could, race them against other people and see how they went. And found these guys, and John was lucky enough to let us jump in and have a run. And yeah, we just we had a good night, really.
Well, certainly on the results front, it was pretty good compared to perhaps other sort of historic mods that you've driven. How'd you find this one in AC in comparison?
Bit early to draw direct comparisons. It's been a while since we run the other ATCC championship that I'm in at Symmons Plains, and a lot has happened in the evolution of those cars since then. But I feel like this is probably a little bit better in just regards to how you can drive the car. It slides. It sort of does kind of what it's supposed to do. You can sort of hit curbs if you really want. It doesn't break. And there's certain definitely factors that the other one's got as well. It's definitely tough on the brakes, but I feel like they're both, decent representations of what they could be. I've never driven a VL Commodore at a racetrack, so again, I don't really know exactly, but for what I sort of would guess, I feel like both have different characteristics, but they both do what they're supposed to do. They both can provide close racing and a bit of fun.
Yeah, certainly. And just to touch on that last race there, with a few laps to go, you had a bit of an awkward moment where there was a car spinning about 2 cars in front of you down into turn 1, and then you had the car between you and that car that was spinning slam on the brakes in comparison. What were you thinking as the big Falcon just stopped suddenly in front of you there at turn 1?
It had more brakes than I did, or it was going at a much lesser pace, because I was probably 150 kilos of pressure on that pedal, which and she wasn't stopping. So yeah, I murdered an XB there, and it didn't help the car then towards the end. So we just limped it home. It was I don't know. It actually was quite weird. Actually, it felt like something broken in the rear. So but I hit it at the front. So I don't know. But anyway, that was just a bit unlucky. 2 lap cars there, and one having an accident, and the other one trying to do its best to stay out of it. But sort of, I was full of steam, and at that stage I wasn't sure what Nathan was doing, and I don't know if it was a lap he pitted or the lap after, but I didn't know whether he pitted or not. So I was sort of guns blazing just to catch him, just in case he already had pitted and had done a really good job. So and I think it was a lap he actually went into the pits or something is when that happened, or something like that. But yeah, I was just no hope of pulling it up, and apologies to that guy. I'm not sure exactly who it was, but yeah, it was a pretty rough hit.
Well, in the end, you did escape it, and you're able to take home both races. So well done, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Just having a look at provisional points after the night is over tonight, with obviously a couple of question marks just over what happened with Terry Marwood in race number 1. It still is Shannon Wright. Actually, it's gone to the top of the order here, and he's got a 21-point margin over Nathan Higginson, and Terry Marwood 3 points further back. So that's how it's panned out with the rough math that I've done, and a large number of guys still locked together. There's Dylan Cole, John Wright, and Scott Nolan. They're only separated by 9 points through positions 5, 6, and 7, and that's after 2 rounds of a 15-round calendar, which, as we bring that up now, you can see the next stop for us next weekend is the one and only Barbagallo Raceway in Wanneroo in Western Australia, and then off to Surfers Paradise for the 4th round a week later. So now I'm not quite sure if that one's going to be the V8 layout or if it's going to be the old school IndyCar layout, but we might leave that until we get to surfers and discover that one for ourselves. First and foremost, big thanks to Lewis for jumping in at short notice, mate. Great to share a box with you as always.
Anytime, mate. It's a good bit of racing, and hopefully I'll catch you for the next one.
And a big thanks to the drivers, and a big thanks to you watching at home. We'll leave it there for the night, and as always, please drive safely. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.